مساء الخير بنا ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
And good morning, everyone. It is Friday, June 14, 2024, and I'm Ray Hanania here at Radio Bellady on WNZK AM 690 radio on the U.S. Arab Radio Network, run by the phenomenal radio personality, Layla El-Husseini, and her entire staff. She does such a great job, Monday through Friday. You got to be listening here, 8 a.m. in Detroit, and online for those people who are using the online link to listen. The number is 248-557-3300 if you want to call in. I'm here now on the second Friday of every month during my off season from Arab News Radio, which should begin the 6-month season in August, overlapping the presidential elections. We're going to be looking at that. Make sure to check out my opinion and analysis columns at Hanania.com and my news stories and op-eds at arabnews.com. Today, we're going to interview Dr. Jill Stein, who is a candidate for president running on the Green Party, advocating not only for our environment and seniors and for human rights and civil rights, issues that all of the other candidates like President Biden, former President Donald Trump, and even independent Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have really ignored, violated, or compromised. I don't know. It's a mess. I thought maybe Kennedy might be good, but he's off the deep end, and he opposes, this is just unbelievable, a ceasefire to end the killing, the genocide, the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. There's no question that what happened October 7th was a terrorist attack, but every day, every week, every month prior to October 7th, Israel committed acts of terrorism and nobody cared. So these crazies, Hamas, who really don't have a right to represent the Palestinians at all, but take advantage of it because of the situation that Israel's fanatic and extreme government have created, they caused a horrible tragedy that's been exploited and made worse by Israel's policies. Everyone, all the candidates, Trump, Biden, Robert F. Kennedy, are pandering to the mighty dollar, and no foreign dedicated lobby donates more money than AIPAC, the network of pro-Israel political action committees. They continue to try and influence our elections with money, driving politics around one very specific foreign issue, their brutal violence in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. Dr. Stein, our guest, who is Jewish, by the way, talks about that and other mainstream American issues, including health care and the rights of senior citizens. You know me, I've been here forever. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War, discharged honorably. I served 12 years in the Illinois Air National Guard. My parents came to America legally from Palestine, and I'm proud to be an American. I am loyal to America, and I would never accept dual citizenship in which I was asked to pledge my allegiance to a foreign country. I don't know how we even allow that in America. Thousands of pro-Israel Americans do that each year. They pledge their allegiance to Israel. You have to swear an oath to Israel, and higher than any other foreign country. And yet they claim to be American. That to me is just disgusting, especially not just because I'm Arab and I'm upset with Israel's government, not the people, but because I'm a veteran. And I think it's just disrespectful to America. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll speak with Dr. Jill Stein on the U.S. Arab Radio Network here at WNZK AM 690 Radio. We'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Hey, Michigan drivers, are you sending or answering group chats behind the wheel? Checking emails at the light? Calling family or friends on the commute? Michigan's hands-free law makes it illegal to manually use electronic devices while behind the wheel of a vehicle. Breaking the law could mean fines or even community service. Go hands-free, just drive. It's the law. Learn more at michigan.gov/distracted driving. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most. And make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
And now I'm here with my guest, Dr. Jill Stein. She's a Harvard-educated doctor, pioneering environmental health, advocate, and organizer for people, planet, and peace. She has helped lead initiatives to fight environmental racism, injustice, and pollution to promote healthy communities and to revitalize democracy. You've done so much. We've heard your name so many times. Dr. Stein, thank you for joining us on our radio show today.
My honor to be here. Thank you.
So give us a little short bio. I read the little clip, from your website, which I believe is Jill Stein 2024, correct?
Jill Stein 2024.com. Yes, exactly.
Got it. Give us a little bio for our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself in your words.
So I'm a mother and a medical doctor. I describe myself as a mother on fire, working to make a world that works for all of our children. Because we are all in this together, as Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I have been an activist, really, a social justice activist, an anti-war activist. I grew up during the Vietnam War and, saw how absolutely useless that was, killed 3 million dark-skinned people in Southeast Asia. What for? Really just as an exercise in empire. I became a medical doctor, worked in medicine for 25 years or so, but saw very early on that our health is not coming out of your doctor's office. Your health is really determined by your community. Everything from air pollution, do you have a good food system? Are you in a food desert? Do you have jobs? Is there poverty? Poverty is the biggest, it's the 4th biggest killer in the country. Are you at war? That's a big killer. The climate and the environment are huge. So I began to work on the upstream causes because, prevention is the name of the game here. And I found that so often when the community is fighting for one thing, you have the government on the side of the corporations, whether it's the fossil fuel companies or big pharma or the health insurance companies or the banks. They're in it for the profit. They're not in it to help the people. So to make a long story short, I moved from clinical medicine to political medicine because politics is kind of the mother of all illnesses. And we have to fix our sick political system so our government can start working with us and for us instead of for its big donors. I first ran for office back in 2002, running for governor. I've learned a lot in the process. I was recruited to run for president first in 2012. Along with the Green Party, we put an agenda on the table that's for everyday people. and everyday people are really struggling. So we need what the Green Party has been leading the charge on, everything from healthcare for everyone as a human right through a single payer system that will save us $500 billion a year, even while we expand healthcare to cover everyone. We should have free public higher education. We need to bail out the students. We bailed out the banks who crashed the economy. And we need to cut the size of our military budget, which is impoverishing us while it's making a mess around the world. And, what we're seeing going on right now in Palestine, that's with our tax dollars and
Right.
with the cover by our government, our weapons, our weapons which are being used in Rafah and, all over Gaza right now and are massacring women and children. This is unacceptable. So this is very much front and center in our campaign. And we're calling for, simply put, an America and a world that works for all of us. Being the U.S. empire is not working actually for any of us, including not even for the U.S. empire. It's just impoverishing us and making us a pariah among nations.
You touched on a lot of the topics that I want to ask you about, but I want to just kind of look at, I think, of course, I'm a senior. I'm born in the United States, served during the military, and I really hate our political system. I've been a political reporter for 45 years, and candidates like you that are so good, that have the credentials, the system is geared against you. It doesn't favor independents who are not run by lobbyists or special interest PACs. How do you break through that ceiling to become what the mainstream media, which I think is biased, would say, oh, well, she's just a third-party candidate. We like her, but she's never going to make it to beat out the two mainstream candidates. What do you say to voters, about that quagmire when they go, should I vote for Biden? He's terrible. Our alternative is Trump. He's horrible. Am I, quote, wasting a vote by voting for a third-party candidate? What do you say to them to get them to understand how important what you're doing is to them?
Absolutely. And I have to say that so many voters now recognize this and recognize that the Democrats or Joe Biden doesn't own your vote. They have to earn your vote. And that's why twice as many people now identify as independents compared to either Democrats or Republicans. It's really this propaganda campaign that we're hearing from the big political parties who are brought to you by Wall Street and the war machine. They want to be able to keep doing that and satisfying their big donors. And so they're trying to intimidate you. But people are standing up like we haven't seen before. And they're saying, if you want my vote, you've got to earn my vote. This is why the power mongers, the political establishment tries to keep us off the ballot because they don't want people to know that there are choices. And so they've created these outrageous rules that keep competition off the ballot. But competition is the heart of our democracy. So right now we are in this battle for the ballot. And we're on the ballot already in like 24 states with several more that are being satisfied in the next couple of weeks. We are on track to be on the ballot in all the states across the country. Once we're on the ballot, the media will be forced to cover us. And then if we creep up in the polls, then we can get into the debates and begin to break through. But let me tell you, in Wisconsin right now, where we've had some mainstream media coverage when we were there, we are now at 22% among people who are 35 and under. So word is getting out, in the way that young people know how to use social media. And when people hear about our campaign, they think, oh my God, I could have health care as a human right, even though I'm not, rolling in dough. I could have health care that I need. I can have pharmaceutical coverage. I can get out of student debt. We could have rent control across the country. We could have solutions that actually meet our desperate and urgent needs. So we're urging people, just stand up for yourself. Don't listen to these propagandists who have been throwing you under the bus and who want to continue doing that. And I urge people, go to JillStein2024.com Sign up to volunteer. We have big battles going on in Illinois and Indiana right now. These are the two remaining difficult states ahead of us.
And how's your response been in the Arab American community and the Muslim American community and among progressives because of this conflict in Gaza? I have heard nothing but support for you from my community. And again, it still comes down to should I vote for her to make a statement, or should we want, they definitely, it sounds like they want to teach the Democratic Party a lesson that they've been taken for granted. Do you feel Arab American, first of all, do you think Arab Americans and Muslims have been taken for granted in this country in the political process?
Oh, absolutely. And have really been thrown to the dogs. I think we're also aware of the kind of racial profiling that goes on and the Islamophobia and the violence against the Arab American community and, the absolute violation of our constitutional rights in the effort of, government and police right now to shut down dialogue. People are trying to, grapple with this genocide that we're seeing on, in live real time on our iPhones, on our computer screens. We need to be able to talk about this and discuss it. Yet the powers that be, both Democrats and Republicans, want to label this discussion as, as insurrection, as a betrayal, as, to try to criminalize it. And they send in the riot police and, bash in the heads of peaceful protesters who are simply saying, they are expressing our moral conscience as a nation. They are saying what the highest courts in the land are saying, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, who are saying this is a genocide. It is against international law. It must be stopped. And in fact, it's even against U.S. law to be sending weapons now to Israel, who is, violating humanitarian rights, that is interfering with the delivery of humanitarian aid, and which is also in violation of nuclear weapons treaties. On all three counts, it's actually illegal to be providing Israel with military support and weapons right now. And yet the people who are standing up to assert our higher values, our human values, are being criminalized and beaten and charged with crimes. So yes, absolutely. The Arab American community is being dealt an incredible injustice, and we need to stand up as Americans on behalf of all of us to assert our right to a foreign policy that reflects our values. In fact, we need a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy. That's what Americans are calling for. But we have a system, a set of political and economic elites who are used to basically, fighting their way into domination. We have an empire, effectively, and a foreign policy based on the exercise of raw military and economic power. This doesn't work. The U.S. is no longer the imperial power of the world. We're just not. We were following the Second World War, and we threw our might around like the bully in the schoolyard. And you know what? It didn't work. Didn't work at all. And now you have countries like Russia and China and India and Korea, South Africa, that their economic curve is going up. Our economic curve is going down. And we are no longer the bully of the world, but the U.S. still thinks so. And we're trying to fight our way into domination. It is a disaster, and we're butting up against potential nuclear conflict. Remember, if you have a nuclear conflict, it doesn't stay over there, because nuclear weapons kick up, that mushroom cloud that you see when a nuclear weapon goes off. That's debris going into the upper atmosphere where it doesn't weather down. So you basically have the dimming of sunlight, and we go into a famine. You have global famine. It's called nuclear winter. So it's in all of our interests to stand up and say, no, we are not going to be the empire of the world. We're not going to fight our way into domination. We need to back off of these conflicts, and we have to start leading the way with international law and human rights.
So in addition to really kind of adhering to the rule of law, which sadly we don't seem to adhere to, you're also saying that we should really kind of take care of ourselves as American people to do both, because there are a lot of people, for example, I know that some 30 states have passed laws that say that I can't boycott Israel. I could boycott any state I want, but in Illinois, it was one of the first states. I served during the military during the Vietnam War, and I'm told I can't criticize a foreign government. It's upsetting to me. These are state laws, but are those things that you could change if you were to become president? Could you stop that kind of discrimination against people based on their political views?
Oh, absolutely. And it is a violation of our basic civil liberties and our freedom of speech, our freedom of political association, our freedom to protest for redress of grievances. This is what democracy depends on. And let me say, in terms of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, our government would be leading the charge on boycott, divestment, and sanctions, because how do we get Israel to comply when Israel has nuclear weapons? We are not going to send in the troops. But on the other hand, we can absolutely deny Israel weapons, and we can deny Israel funding. We can deny Israel, the rockets it depends on. We have the power here. The president can simply pick up the phone, like Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s, and told Israel, bring your troops home, where Israel had gone into Lebanon to pursue the PLO, who was the Hamas of its day, PLO, was transformed into a peaceful force. This can happen with Hamas as well. The notion that you have to kill off every last member of Hamas in order to achieve peace in Israel is ridiculous. And in fact, Hamas has already agreed to a peace treaty that Joe Biden, introduced. Hamas has agreed. It's Israel who's not agreeing. So, let's forget the need, to kill every last male in Gaza. And besides, they're not killing the males. They're especially killing women and children. So this is nuts, and it needs to be stopped. Absolutely. And BDS is a very important tool to change the direction of Israel's government in order to get it to comply with international law. Because when you had the International Criminal Court issued their arrest warrants against Netanyahu and his defense minister, you had basically Israel doubling down and, expanding its assault and the massacres, and this, the assault on the tent massacre, which is just unbelievable. Israel has completely gone off the charts now. This is like a genocide on steroids that's happening. So we have to use other means of reining Israel in its apartheid government, its genocide. It is not responding nicely when we ask nicely. So if you don't want to send in the troops, we're going to have to use boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And we need our civil liberties back. This is part of being an empire. When a country becomes an empire abroad, it destroys, democracy here at home. And this is happening in a very big way. And the violence that we are seeing from the police forces, these are police in the U.S. and around the world who are being trained by the Israeli occupation forces, so they are learning these horrible, abusive, vicious tactics, which are now being used on innocent civilians, students, and peaceful protesters. I've been there. So I have been on the receiving end of this and have seen a lot of it happening. It's absolutely horrifying. We don't have to wait for Donald Trump to see fascism. We have fascism, rearing its ugly head right now. And people need to know we have to stand up and fight this. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. Simply by being quiet or voting for one of these genocidal candidates, that is not going to fix it. You just blend in with the background when you vote for the so-called lesser evil. And good luck figuring out which one is the lesser evil when they're both destroying our civil liberties, our human rights, and are leading the charge on genocide. The other quote that I really urge people to remember is from Alice Walker, who said that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Remember, it's 68% of the American public want to shut down this genocide. They want a diplomatic solution, a ceasefire immediately. That's 68%. Add that to 63% of Americans, excuse me, who are living paycheck to paycheck. 44 million young people who are locked into student debt. We are the only campaign that will actually solve all of those problems. And when you have three pro-genocide candidates, Trump, Biden, and Robert F. Kennedy, they can all be splitting the pro-genocide vote. we will be the only unifying pro-worker, pro-human rights, pro-democracy choice on the ballot to end student debt, to make healthcare free at the point of delivery, to make public higher education free. We can mobilize huge constituents and actually get to where we could be beating the 3 genocide candidates. So don't accept what they tell you. They are feeding you wall-to-wall propaganda. We have the power, and we don't have to get into the White House to start asserting power. Just getting to 5% means, number one, that we don't have to go through this ballot access distraction in the next election. We will already have ballot access and we can get down to work. So it means we are building our power. Simply if we get to 5%, we will get much further in the next election. And add to that, if you get to 5%, you also get a lot of public funding in the next election as well. So think of this as building your power. You're not necessarily going to start off full bore, although I wouldn't rule that out. It's absolutely possible to win this in this race. And the key thing right now is for people to go to jillstein2024.com and sign up. You don't have to live in Illinois or Indiana to help. And if you can come down wherever you are, if you're in a neighboring state, come and lend a hand. The deadlines are coming up on the 23rd of June and at the end of June. The first is in Illinois and the second is in Indiana. We need to be on the ballot across the country in all states in order to truly challenge power. And if we do that, hold on to your hats, because the American people are just beginning to fight back.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here at Radio Ballady here at WNZK AM 690. And when we come back from the break, we will continue this interview with Dr. Jill Stein, who is a candidate for President of the United States in the November 5th, 2024 presidential election. I'm Ray Hanania. We will be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
In a perfect world, everyone would be a perfect driver.
Hands at 9 and 3, everyone.
9 and 3.
Everyone would follow all the rules.
Please, go ahead and merge. I'll make room.
Thank you, fellow driver.
And nothing unexpected would ever happen. Even the squirrels would know the right time to safely cross the road. In this perfect world, you wouldn't have to wear a seatbelt. But in case you hadn't noticed, we don't live in a perfect world. About 1,000 people in Michigan die each year in vehicle crashes, and thousands more are injured. Wearing your seatbelt reduces your risk of death in a crash by 45% in a car and by 60% in a pickup truck. So until we find a perfect world to drive in, make our imperfect world safer by buckling up. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
And welcome back to Radio Bellady. I'm Ray Hanania, and we're going to continue this interview with Dr. Jill Stein, who is a independent candidate with the Green Party running for president of the United States. By the way, she reached out to Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Hammoud to see if he would be the vice president or if he could. Unfortunately, he was 3 months shy of the age requirement. If he had been born 3 months earlier, he would have qualified to run on the national federal election for as vice president. Anyway, let's go back to this interview with Dr. Jill Stein. I know you said earlier you're on 24 states, so I think you're moving pretty quick. I don't know if you know this. Of course, I'm Palestinian. My wife happens to be Jewish. When we talk about BDS, I always try to explain to people that we're not talking about, at least for my perspective, that we're not anti-Israel. We're anti-Israel's government. We're anti-Israel's policy. So when they say, am I going to boycott Israel? In essence, I want to boycott a bad policy. Yes. I think that Israel could be a good place with a two-state solution with Palestinians. And I wonder how you view that, in terms of Palestinians and Jews and Israelis, we get along really well. We really do. But there are people that want to make us bad.
Yes. And there are people who want to play a game of divide and conquer right now. Because if you go way back in history, Jews and Muslims and Christians have lived together for millennia peacefully and been good neighbors and gotten along very well. The problem began when the Zionists came in and began a policy of displacement.
Which was a political organization.
That's right. The Zionist is a political wing of Judaism, you could say, because even Zionism has been very controversial within Judaism. So they are different. And there's no bad blood between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. The issue is about displacement. The issue has always been about ethnic cleansing. And when the Zionists came in, and they were traumatized. So yes, there was a lot of, incredible grief and trauma. But that doesn't make it okay to then inflict that on someone else. So we need a world, and we need an Israel-Palestine that assures everyone's human rights, that assures security for everyone. And that can happen. And when we talk about BDS, it's against the apartheid state of Israel, just like apartheid in South Africa had a big boycott that helped it move along and adopt a different policy. That's what has to happen here. And far better that it happened through peaceful means. Because right now, Israel's apartheid policy, its practice of ethnic cleansing, and the massacres against Palestinians go way, way back to even before the founding of the State of Israel. So a lot of people think, this just began with the attack by Hamas. But no, there was an attack before Hamas's attack. In fact, there was a whole lot of them. And there was really a way of life. The occupation and the apartheid is essentially a murderous way of life. And there were massacres of villages, some 500 villages, Palestinian villages were destroyed at the time of the Nakba, which is the big ethnic cleansing when, 700,000 Palestinians were basically driven out. And that didn't happen by chance. That was a plan that was part of the Zionist plan. It's only come to light, really, in like the 1990s when Israel opened up its national archives to historians, and they could then see that, oh my goodness, there really was a plan of ethnic cleansing from the beginning. So that's not about Jews. That was about, the Zionist movement that claimed to be bringing a people without a land to a land without a people. But it wasn't a land without a people. It was a land with Palestinians and people who had lived there and created a thriving, society and a very rich and diverse culture, which is now in diaspora all over the world and, is an incredibly vibrant and rich, and I mean that in a cultural sense, a culturally rich diaspora. This came from a country, a country of Palestine. And we need to restore the integrity and the rights of that country, the land that was stolen from people, their homes that were stolen. We need to restore this and create a land here for Muslims, for Jews, for Christians, a place that does not discriminate based on religion or ethnicity, a place of it should be a model place of human rights. This this Mecca of civilization should be restored as a model of human rights and human values.
And I believe I'm correct in pointing out that you happen to be Jewish also. So that this idea that your criticism of Israel's government, people are going to say, oh, that's anti-Semitism. But you can't be anti-Semitic. You're Jewish. And I feel I'm Semitic too, even though I'm an Orthodox Christian Palestinian. But tell us how you view, because you did touch on this a little bit. There's been a conflict going on since 1948. It continued after 1967. Even during the prior to October 7th, there was something like, according to B'Tselem, about 230 Palestinians who were killed in the beginning of 2023. For about 400 that were killed in 2022. How do you view this conflict that began in the media and in our politics on October 7th, which was a horrible, terrible thing to happen? I don't want to see anybody killed.
Exactly.
But it looks like everything started that day. Nobody looks back at the history. How do you view this conflict? How do we bring it to an end? Would you have given Israel's government the $40 billion after that they're using to fuel the violence? How do you look at it? What would you have done?
Yes, I mean, Israel has not been, that is the apartheid state of Israel, which is violating international law ever since, depends, different people point to different, we'll put it this way. The ethnic cleansing began even before the state of Israel declared its independence. So the ethnic cleansing has been there. I mean, you can look back to the terrorist bombing of the King David Hotel in 1947, before the founding of the State of Israel. And these were, some of the Jewish Zionist, I should say the Zionist groups who were committing great acts of violence from the very beginning. That violence at the King David Hotel, which killed 100 innocent civilians, that was just a symbol of what was going on then. And there were massacre after massacre that were being committed by the Zionists against the Palestinians for the most part. And that's where the problem started. And then you can look at a whole chain of events since then. But the violence has been overwhelmingly on the side or on the part of apartheid Israel practicing ethnic cleansing. And yes, Palestinians now and then fight back, but not very much and not really with weapons. And it's been tiny. Ralph Nader quotes numbers, something like 200 Palestinian deaths for every single, Israeli death. In my view, no civilians should ever be targeted, period. That's what international law says. And that's the standard that everyone should be held to. But let's be clear that the violence here is largely coming from Israel, which is super armed here, is a superpower, has nuclear weapons. Hamas and the Palestinians have nothing. They really have nothing. So we need all parties to comply with international law. The genocide needs to be ended now. All parties. And the occupation is a big part of this. The occupation since 1967, whereby Israel then occupied Gaza and the West Bank and the Golan Heights and East Jerusalem, and I may be leaving something out, but the huge occupations. When you're under an occupation, life is pretty brutal, miserable, and murderous. That's what an occupation is. So we have to end that occupation in order to really be consistent with international law and restore human rights. Hamas has already said they're in agreement with the latest peace treaty. So it's not like, oh, you have to kill them all off because they won't sign a treaty. That's not true. And we also know that from the PLO. That's what they said about the PLO before, you know. When you are consistently murdering people, occupying them, you're going to generate violent pushbacks. We have to stop that violent occupation, and then everything's going to work out fine. This isn't rocket science. This is about international law and human rights.
Do you think part of the problem is that the way it's set up, that there are really two separate governments in among the Palestinians that allowed Hamas to kind of take over and run Gaza and restricted the Palestine National Authority to the West Bank? It seemed like it played into Israel's hands, that the violence gives them an excuse to continue expanding settlements, continue taking land, continue receiving funds from the United States, continue expanding into these areas. It's almost the opposite of moving toward a two-state solution. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but if you talk a little bit about that, I mean, what's the solution in your mind? How do we get out of this?
Yeah, and let me just add one point to what you just said about you have these two, you have Hamas and you have the PLO. And remember, it is now public record that actually the Israeli apartheid government was funding Hamas.
Right.
So they helped get Hamas going because it was then created a divide and conquer situation. And the PLO, has long been kind of bought off. So Palestine has not had sovereignty. It needs to have sovereignty. It needs to have, it needs to be a sovereign nation. It needs to not be occupied. It needs not to be exploited in every way imaginable.
Is there a way to reach a solution given the October 7th just happens to be a bigger act of violence from, an extremist group? Prior to that was a bigger act of violence by Israel. We keep having these explosions of violence that continue. They subside for a while, they start up again. Is there a way to break that, to get both sides to recognize the benefit of peace? And has the United States actually tried to really do that? I mean, how would you be different?
I think there needs to be some adults in the room here who are not taking sides except the side of international law and the side of human rights. And we demand that all parties rise to what human rights and international law demands of them. Because Israel is the outsized military force here, Israel really needs to pull back. But we are in this cycle, that Gandhi described as an eye for an eye until we're all blind. We have this escalating violence, but that violence is mostly committed by Israel. When Palestinians or Hamas or the PLO fought back, it was in really the smallest of ways. But no civilian lives should ever be targeted or lost. So we're compelling all parties to rise to international law. But that's not just stop killing people. It's also stop the occupation. You have to stop the ethnic cleansing. You have to stop destroying people's homes and seizing their homes. You have to stop destroying their farmland and their olive trees. You have to stop this all-out war against the Palestinian people. This has been a long-standing ethnic cleansing that has eventually accelerated into the genocide that exists now. So we need some adults in the room who are going to take the side of international law and human rights. The United States has the power to do this with a simple phone call. Congress has the power to do it if it was obeying U.S. laws here and to stop transferring weapons to Israel while they're violating human rights. So this is not rocket science. We know that Ronald Reagan did this in the 1980s simply by picking up the phone. He stopped the conflict. We know that Eisenhower also did this in the 1950s, telling Israel to bring its troops home. But we have to go beyond that now. It's not enough to simply stop killing people. You have to also stop the ethnic cleansing, because that essentially is killing people as well in a different kind of way. So the bottom line is we need to comply with international law, but that's what the whole world is saying right now. And in terms of like anti-Semitism and the welfare of Israelis, there's nothing that could be more harmful to the long-term interests of Israelis than what they're doing right now, which is really poisoning the whole world against them, making themselves a pariah among nations. And it's not only Israel, it's also the U.S. But this especially, is a big driver of anti-Semitism, because Israel is perceived now as this incredibly murderous, brutal, barbaric force. And to look at, what they're doing, yes, it is. I mean, the incredible torture and murder of children on an industrial scale that's going on right now, while the hospitals are being, the whole healthcare system is being destroyed, and they're being starved at the same time. It's like, how could you be more barbarous, more murderous? So if there's anything that's threatening the future of Israel, this is it. And Israel's neighbors are, the people are really rising up against Israel, demanding that the peace treaties be torn up. There's a war which is accelerating with Lebanon. There are large demonstrations in Jordan where people are demanding that the peace treaty be torn up. So there's, this is not in the interests of Jews or in the interests of Israelis. It is in everybody's interests to get with the program right now with an immediate ceasefire and an end to occupation, ethnic cleansing, and this assault on human rights that's taking place right now by the apartheid state of Israel.
And I want to. So we're going to take a quick break here at WNZK AM 690 Radio. I'm Ray Hanania. We were just doing an interview that I pre-recorded with Jill Stein, and I thought she brought up a lot of good points. I wrote an article about what she said that you can go to arabnews.com to find it in my op-ed columns, or if you want, you can go to hanania.com or rayhanania.com, either one. And in the notes section, there's a link to the interview that I wrote. And of course, there are other columns. As you know, I'm very conservative. Most Arabs and most Muslims are conservative on a lot of issues, but it's not 100% conservative. And I'm also liberal too, but I'm not 100% liberal. It's by issue. I don't condemn the whole nation of Israel. I don't condemn the whole nation of Palestine. I look at the governments and I criticize governments. That's why I'm so opposed to the BDS laws that exist in 28 to 30 U.S. states that say that if you're an American citizen, you can't criticize or boycott Israel. And if you do, they're going to punish you and deny you your rights as a citizen. So those are basic differences. They want to make it all sound like, oh, you hate Jews or you hate Israel. That's not true. What I do hate is bad politics. What I do hate is the violation of the rule of law. What I do hate is extremism that lies and distorts and embraces hypocrisy. And I think most people do. But, when you look at the Arab community, they're very emotional. When you look at the Israeli community, they're emotional too. But the difference is the Israelis are more of a Western-based people, and the Arabs are not. And the difference is that when you're Western-based, you understand the power of communications. You understand how to get your message across. The Arabs don't know how to do that. We've tried. There's some. I mean, they're getting better at it. Don't think that they're not some good, Arab journalists who are out there or who are not getting the message out. They are, some of them. But overall, the use of communications as a strategy is not used by the Palestinians. And we get dragged into the stereotypes that the pro-Israel extremist movement, the supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu, want us to engage in. And then we cross the line. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be anti-Semitic. You don't want to be Islamophobic. You don't want to be anti-Christian. You don't want to be anti-Jewish. You don't want to be anti-Arab. You can be anti-policy. Anti-policy is justified. That's what you can do. We're going to take our last break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines at 248-557-2233. 3300 if you want to talk about anything. And of course, I can't, if you don't call in, I'll just talk because I can talk for 5 hours. I can do comedy for 2 hours. I've been blessed. Instead of becoming a doctor, I became a communicator and a writer. And I think I lucked out. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to be right back right after these messages.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics, according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
Clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want it.
5-year-old Lila and her mom are on their way home from Grandma's, singing Lila's favorite song. A few blocks away, 25-year-old Dylan is visiting friends at a small party. He finishes off his last beer,
Later, skater.
gets in his truck, and starts for home. Mom and Lila turn onto Maple Street.
If you're
So does Dylan.
know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it's shout hooray.
Every 50 minutes in the United States, someone dies in a crash involving a driver impaired by alcohol or drugs. If you're impaired and you know it, don't drive. Drive sober. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, PMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
And welcome back to Radio Ballad. I'm Ray Hanania here at the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 Radio, broadcasting live in the greater Detroit region and online. I have the links. We're on Facebook at U.S. Arab Radio. We're broadcasting live. So this entire radio show that we did with the interview with Dr. Jill Stein, a Jewish American candidate running for president who was more sympathetic and committed to Americanism and the rule of law than anybody. Maybe Joe Biden might be committed to the rule of law, but I'm not sure he's completely there anymore. He's being propped up by the Clintons, who I think is a disease. Clintonism is a disease that really has destroyed our politics. The things that they charged Trump with, they could have charged Clinton with 10 times more, and they didn't do it. And it's all because some people play politics rather as an alternative to the rule of law. So if you'd like to call in 248-557-3300, we got a couple minutes to take a call, but I'll tell you that I write a lot of columns, about 5 to 8 columns every week. I love writing, and I love ripping apart issues, presenting my perspective on the issues. And it's not because I want to convince you to agree with me. I want to give you something to think about. I want to give you the alternative views and opinions that the mainstream media is not giving you. The mainstream media, they're no longer journalism. They're more advocacy, partisan politics. You listen to CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, all of them. It's like talking heads, and they're so partisan and biased. Some of what they say is fine, but when it comes to the Middle East, the media hates Arabs. The media in this country hates Muslims, and the media in this country especially hates Palestinians. And I'm going to tell you, don't think if you're Chaldean, by the way, because I know I have a big fan group in the Chaldean community, and I appreciate it. But if you're Chaldean, don't think that an American doesn't look at you and see you as a Muslim or an Arab or a Palestinian. You're Christian from the Middle East. You're not Arab. But you know what? Americans don't care. It's what you symbolize in their mind. And when you recognize that, you realize that the only way to empower yourself is to work together. Arabs, Muslims, progressive, Chaldeans, Assyrians. There's a big Assyrian population in the Chicagoland area. And they're not Arab. But believe me, when someone looks at them, a mainstream American, and the media especially, they're Arab. They hate Arabs. Arab is a 4-letter word in this country. And the way to change it is to set aside our petty differences and work together. I think that there are two candidates that appeal the most to the Arab community are former President Donald Trump, mainly because Biden has done such a terrible job. Arabs cannot afford to give him any consideration anymore at all. He gave Israel $40 billion to buy all those weapons that Israel used to kill almost 40,000 Palestinians. 1/3 of them are women and children and babies. Talk about killing babies. They only talk about killing babies and killing women and children when they talk about October 7th, but they don't talk about killing babies and women and children when they talk about October 8th through June 14th by Israel. That's unfair. And we could change that by being smart. We're not anti-Semitic. We're not anti-Jewish. We're anti-policy. I'm anti-Israel's government policy. Just like here in the U.S., I'm anti-American policy sometimes. There's no such thing as 100%. I disagree with Trump. I disagree with Biden. I really disagree now with Robert F. Kennedy because I think he's doing a terrible job. So I'm hoping that Jill Stein probably will be the better alternative for people who believe that the rule of law should run this country rather than partisan, selfish politics. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this interview we did with Dr. Jill Stein. It is posted. It's broadcasting live on Facebook at US Arab Radio, and we'll download that video and put it on YouTube and put it on other Facebook pages. I'm interested in any feelings or comments that you have. You can always reach me at Hanania.com. I want to thank Layla El-Husseini and Mike and Iman for helping with all this. We're going to be back next month, the second Friday of July, with another show. And then in August, we'll return with the Arab News weekly radio show that I do for 6 months. Anyway, have a great day. Remember, go to Hanania.com for more information. We'll talk to you later, and happy Father's Day to everybody. Happy Father's Day. Have a great week. Bye-bye, everybody.